Okay.
There we go.
All right. Okay, so we're back over in Visual Studio 2017, and let's take a look at a couple of the pieces that we already have in place for this, and then we'll take a look at what it's going to take to, number one, move all this over to SQL Server 2016, and then number two, how do we just easily point our solution to point to that new database structure. So if you remember from session one, we had in our startup CS this context that gets created, this tags context. Let's take a look at that again. And remember, we're using the SQL Server middleware, use SQL Server middleware for this. If I go to that definition, we've got a DB set called uploads and a DB set called tags. Now, this is going to map back to tables. This doesn't have to map back to tables, but it's going to map back to tables. If I open up SQL Server Object Explorer, I can use the SQL Server data tools right from here. Let's look at how we do this. And there's really two ways that we use SQL Server data tools. Number one, we can use it right from the SQL Server Object Explorer. Number two, we can pull in and create a database project, and we'll do both of those. So let's imagine that I wanted to point to that database. I can just say add SQL Server. I'll pull that up, and one of the cool things that I've got here now is Azure. We'll pull that up, and I'll select the Tagger database. We'll put in a password here. I'll say remember password. It's going to pull that into SQL Server Object Explorer, and now a lot of people are going to be saying, well, I was able to do that in 2015. Well, that is true. You could, but there's some things that you wouldn't have been able to do without installing SSDT. So now if we go to databases, we've got this Tagger database. Now, remember, this is storing all of our uploaded image information and all of the tags. So there's a couple things I could do from here. One of them is schema compare. We're going to look at all three of these, but let's just look at schema compare. It's going to bring that up, and it's going to say, oh, compare to what? I'm going to select a target here, and I'm going to select, in this example, another database. So I've got these two databases. Neither of them are the ones that I want to compare to, so I'm actually going to add a new database here. This one I know is my SQL Server 2016 is windowdb.tagger.it. And this one's using SQL Server authentication, and we'll put in the information there. And I'll select the Tagger database that exists out there. I'll say connect. Okay. So now we've got the source and the destination, and all I have to do is click compare. It's going to take a second and run out there, and it's going to compare everything that's out there. Again, not just tables, not just stored procedures, but you may even see some encryption keys and things like that related to 2016 that'll be out there. So we'll wait a second for that to load up.
So it's both of these databases are stored in Azure, right? Sort
of. So the SQL Server 2016 is in an Azure VM. So imagine this is anywhere. This could be on-prem.
Yes. Yep.
This could be on-prem. So here's what it's saying. It's saying you've got this tags history and this tags history underscore history that don't exist in the target. We could also take a look at this by schema. And we could take a look at this by type. So those are tables. We could take a look at it by action. These are going to be adds. So what this is saying is you've got these two tables that exist that don't exist in SQL Server 2016. Now here's a tip. This tags history is a temporal table. So a temporal table actually has a hidden history table underneath it. Well, so I want to get that over there. There's a couple of different ways I could do that. I could just publish this out there like that. I could create a project and run a script, or I could just create a new temporal table in a project against SQL Server 2016. So did you follow all three of those choices?
Yeah.
So I want to do the third one because the third one I think is the coolest. This gives us the ability to create a new project. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to that SQL Server 2016. I've got it now here in my history. Remember that was a Windows DB. SQL Server 2016 running on Windows. I'm going to say connect. And now that that loads, I'm going to select that tagger database, and I'm going to say create new project. And now it's going to say, what do you want to call the project? We'll just call that database 1, since that's such a great, clever name there anyway. We'll say start. And so this is going to actually create a database project and configure everything to point to that specific database and give us the opportunity to manage that separately. So we could have just pushed it over, but that would have been too easy, almost a little bit lazy, and wouldn't have been as fun. So this is actually going out, and now I've got this, RC is restarting. So we might put a break in the video here and have me do that again. If you're listening, Blake, I told you this session was problematic, this second one with this.
It blew up and restarted. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't do it every time, right?
It doesn't do it every time.
Yeah, an issue?
Yeah, so SQL Server Visual Studio crashed, as it does sometimes do there. If you can put a block there, I'm going to get us back to this point, back to the point that it was at.
Okay, hold on 1 second. When?
And so, Jeff, we have this temporal table that we noticed when we did a schema comparison.